Illia is the co-founder of Near Protocol, which is celebrating 3 years, by the way. Prior to that, he was with deep learning research and led a team at Google working on deep learning research. Illia, whenever you're ready, we can get this started.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here, and yeah, I'm excited to see all your hacks when the hackathon ends. Yeah, wanted to talk today about Open Web, what it is, and kind of how to hack for it, I guess. Let me share my screen, and we can start. Yeah, just while we're here, yeah, we actually started in August, pretty much six to eight, I guess, near. So it is actually 3 years since we started. I'm really excited about this journey. So let me kind of first introduce a little bit about Open Web. Generally, like when we're thinking about web, right? I mean, all of us are using it, all of us are using the word, but what is this actually, right? And actually, web was one of the protocols of the kind of internet in general. So when just internet was kind of starting, there was like ARPANET, all those networks, and there was a set of open protocols that people were using to communicate using these networks. And email is actually one of the few protocols that survived kind of through this time. Then the web came, and web was really this idea of how do we kind of exchange information, how do we like link to it and share content and do this thing. And so this was kind of in '89, it started out, and then for a while we had this idea of, yellow pages and internet and all this kind of like basic stuff. Let's put information on the internet and everybody will be able to have access to it. And then about in 97, 98, when Amazon, Google, and kind of a few other big companies were starting, this idea of interactive web came in, right? This idea that you can actually interact with these applications. You can actually able to put in information and see relevant links, or you can put in information that will stay there. And this is where we have social, we have all those things. But with that, we kind of lost some of this open protocol ideas. We kind of lost a lot of the spirit behind the original internet. And instead, we started to kind of give a lot of power to these big companies that are providing us these services, right? So we kind of became almost like both customers, but in many cases, products of the services. And with that, you have user data acquisition, you have data leaks that's been happening all this time, because kind of you have this central honeypot place where all of your data is, and it's being sold, it's been stolen, and it's being used in all kinds of ways. And so what we have kind of nowadays is this resurgence of the protocol idea, of the ideas of how do we build something that doesn't require this kind of centralized provider that will be exploiting this data and exploiting this usage, but really kind of bringing it back to the original ideals. Now, in parallel, there has been a growth of blockchain, right? And it started with just money. It started with a simple idea: how do we make a peer-to-peer money where nobody's in the middle, where nobody's in control except the people who actually hold their money? And this is where Bitcoin was born. But as we saw in the past few years, kind of this idea of, well, actually you can build more than just pure transactional money. You can actually have a full financial system. You can have all of kind of programmable types of applications that leverage money as one of the components and use the same technology, use the blockchain, use this trustless layer to really start building something that now we know as DeFi or OpenFi, that really transforms almost how people kind of operate with money. And so Open Web, kind of from one side, right, we have this pattern of like people trying to go away from this big big centralized companies that are operating, and from the other side, we have this technology kind of pattern, right, of, well, actually we have now a trustless, no intermediary protocols and systems to build on top of which we can actually build this Open Web. And so this is like for me, this is where these two things meet, right? Because a lot of people have been trying to build, for example, like Mastodon and other protocols, open protocols, and even the instant messaging protocols, but none of them succeeded because they were building them in vacuum. They were just trying to build a protocol. And they didn't have this kind of trustless layer and financial incentive layer on the bottom. So that's where we are. And so what is actually Open Web, right? What is this concept? I mean, and people call it Web3 as well, but Open Web is really this idea of there's this set of philosophies that people follow when they build applications, right? And decentralization is one of these philosophies, right? So there's really this idea that you don't want to have a single center, single server, single party that is able to control the whole system. You don't want this to be able to bring it down or leak data or whatever. You also want kind of this idea of composability, right? Because when we think of Google's and Facebook's, they always provided some kind of API. You can always use their service, but they control it, and they are really only give you a fraction of things that you can build, that you can use from their service. If you working inside, everything is very composable. So I worked at Google, and inside Google actually feels like a huge open source environment where you can just take a little bit of here, a little bit of there, compose it, and launch a new application. And this is idea, but actually in a permissionless, open, to everyone way is the spirit here. You definitely want it to be open, right? You don't want need to pass an interview to Google to be able to do this stuff, or there's some kind of guards that oh, if you're from this country, if you whatever is the property that people like to discriminate on, you don't want any of that, and this is very hard to achieve, right? You want it to be user first, and this is where if you think of companies is never user first, right? Its values are always driven toward kind of company internally, and so if you're building companies, it's really hard to be user first. However, they say, because you always user for you is just a source of income, right? And so you're just trying to kind of figure out how to extract that income from them. And then in kind of the spirit of blockchain, right, this is where you own your keys, you own your money, you own your whatever that is. And so we want more of that. We want more ability of users actually owning their data, owning their governance, and being able to decide for themselves what they want. And obviously, underneath, you need markets and you need economy, because this is a driver. This is the ability to actually, invest in innovation, achieve it, and kind of sustain it over time if we have ability to create the economy. So I have this very messy graph. I can zoom in a little bit for a second. And so this is just to show you, I like to say, this is the idea that there's always a plan somewhere. So kind of the idea is that when we started out with blockchain, there's a lot of components that go into building a blockchain, storage, networking, sharding, executions, and all those things. But blockchain is just a small component, right? And when we look at it, right, there's a lot of kind of infrastructure that goes into it, but then there's a lot of applications and protocols that you build on top. And I'll kind of go over basic stuff. But kind of you have a whole slew of financial applications, you have a whole slew of infrastructure and indexing stuff. And so this is just an idea that as we are developing this, there's a lot of things that are in progress, and there's a lot of things to be built. And this is actually a call for hackers to actually go and hack some of the stuff. So let me kind of explain what we already have, right? This is, I mean, and as I mean the whole space, right? We have actually a set of primitives that are very powerful, that are actually enable a number of things if you combine them in the right ways. So we have a programmable ownership. We have a way to program ownership of some digital information, some digital data. That can be money, can be data, can be hashes of some data on Filecoin. This can be NFTs. This can be actually something that maps to a real world, right, to a real world item. And you can program it in kind of unlimited ways, right? You can say well, if it's Thursday and you try to transfer it, it actually will transfer it to somebody else, right? You can do whatever you want. And this is something that's not possible to do in normal kind of programming, right? This is not something that you are able to program banks to do stuff, or program ownership databases to do stuff in such kind of powerful way. we have this pseudonymous identity, right? Identity is important because it allows people to, well, obviously to build reputation, to accrue kind of information, to have the ownership. But pseudonymous means also people can have multiple of them that are kind of exposing different angles of this thing. And obviously privacy and ability to really kind of perform things that otherwise maybe will be harder to do. We have encryption and proxy re-encryption. And if you're not familiar with proxy encryption, re-encryption is this idea that if I encrypt some data, I can actually allow you to have access to it through a set of kind of cryptographic primitives and set of nodes without anybody else kind of having access to it and me needing to re-download this data. And so this allows now to share data in kind of different ways with different parties via pretty much trustless protocols. Obviously, we have decentralized storage. I mean, we have Filecoin here and a few other solutions. We have oracles. Oracles are actually a very powerful concept because they bring the information from off-chain, on-chain, and we need this we need this information to do both economic and non-economic decisions. A really cool concept is zero-knowledge proofs, right? Is ability to prove something that this is an outcome of some computation without actually redoing the whole computation. And it's pure magic, but it actually works. And now we are able to do this in new, interesting ways. And the thing I'm really excited about is kind of decentralized autonomous organizations. Is this idea of organizing people around the world in novel ways, right? It's completely novel ways, and still being able to have access to all the programmable ownership, to economy, to finances, to all those things, kind of through this new level, right? Think of it as if companies kind of a legacy style, DAOs is a way to kind of program a company that is global and have all the same, can have all the same features or whatever else you want different. And it allows us to kind of create this new organization that are impossible to do before. So all those are primitives that are already here. Like you can use them today and you can build novel applications. So like, how do we have this? Well, actually, because we have all this infrastructure built, right? So we have scalable blockchains that allow you to kind of have this ownership, have these identities and kind of things around that. You have indexing and querying. This is kind of one of the blobs there on the chart where you're able to actually connect your front ends to the nodes kind of in an easy way, get the data that they need and all those things, right? We have scalable storage chains like Filecoin. We have economically secured oracles, which allow you to trust, like as a smart contract, you can trust the data that comes in with some economic guarantees. And we have new ways of kind of getting people in, right? The gateways and exchanges are allowed for a person who never seen crypto to actually start using it and being able to kind of onboard into this. So all this is already here. These components are kind of built, and it's now about how do we combine them. So the other side of this, right, is really reimagining how we're doing things. Because when you build things in the kind of Web 2, if you build a SaaS or if you build a consumer app, there's a set of ways how you usually would build an application, how you build a company, right? You would have a marketing budget. You would, go out to, Facebook, buy Facebook ads and YouTube ads. You would, figure out how to get your app installed on all kinds of phones through, ads in other games or in other applications. But it's not really how you would do it in kind of open web, because you now have this, one of the pieces, one of the components you have is ownership itself. You can actually kind of program ownership of your company, of your project, of application you're building, and you can use it to do all kinds of stuff, right? So the simplest thing, right, is really about building a community around application who will become your most loyal fans, who will be also owners of this application through various ways, and through that they actually will become your marketers and your influencers and your community members who will go out and bring more users. And so this is, I call it the usage mining. This idea that like what you want to do, you want to really align the way people use your networks, the way your application or network is growing, right, in a value. And you really just allow people to get ownership by doing that, right? And like in DeFi, a lot of it is, it's called liquidity mining because liquidity is the way to kind of grow the network. But this can be anything. This can be a social graph where, you know, the social graph is, its value is kind of the number of connections. And so you can actually align around growing the number of connections as a network and receive kind of value around that. And at the same time, you have kind of this ownership now becomes, you know, it transforms how people think about the applications and kind of how they associate themselves with them, right? A good example have been in Toronto, a taxi company actually used this idea and they aligned their usage mining around drivers driving the taxi, right? And so drivers became so kind of embedded into this application, they became, you know, the biggest fans. They kept, you know, selling this app to their customers, to their friends, to kind of everyone who wants to listen, because it aligned both them receiving income and ownership in this application, which is, you know, in a way captures future income of the system. And so like that app before pandemic have outperformed Uber in Toronto because of kind of really aligning these networks. And so you have this novel ways to really build applications that are almost impossible to build before because you can be global, you can be kind of using these primitives, and you can create new ways of actually aligning people to really push this application, grow this application without kind of building a marketing machine, without building all of the things that we kind of usually do in our sales machine in Web2. So what's next, right? I kind of talked about, you know, primitives, we have infrastructure, we have this new ways. So like what's missing, right? Why is not everyone, you know, why is my phone doesn't have all the apps are using open web? And so the thing that's missing right now, right, and this is again excerpted from the graph, is a set of common protocols that would connect kind of this basic primitives and what the applications will be at the end, right? So a few of the protocols that I believe that needs to be built kind of in incoming year or years are social graph, right? Like if you think of it, when we right now using on Facebook, it's stored on Facebook, then you go on LinkedIn, it's like its own social graph. And so you have like every single app has its own social graph. And so having a common social graph protocol, right, where kind of for your identity or identities even, you have your friends, you have your followers, you have your kind of, you know, work colleagues, and it doesn't matter which app you go, but it's actually like, you know, it's connected to your identity and it's, you know, encrypted to you and it's kind of yours, and you just allowing apps to use it when you are interacting with them, pretty much would allow kind of open up a huge set of use cases and a huge set of applications. Communication is another one, is really kind of creating communication channels between, you know, multi-party. Right now, we again relying, even with all, you know, the signals and telegrams, which are supposed to be, you know, encrypted and everything, we're still relying on a centralized party to deliver our messages, even though underneath we have internet that is decentralized. And so, and again, like the decentralized communication protocols have existed, they just never actually beat the centralized one because they're always kind of lost in the kind of this investment slash like protocol game. And now we have an opportunity to build these protocols that are incentivized to be kind of growing. Music and video and kind of across all the content, there's a lot of kind of opportunity to really reimagine and have a common protocols that musicians and videographers and all these people, they right now are receiving a smallest portion of the income that they can be receiving from their fans, right? And NFTs is one way to connect them, but really there's a lot to do on kind of on the basic stuff as well. Certification and reputation, right, is just the ability to track around the identity of the person, like the pseudonymous identity, or even a kind of some identifier of an object, right, certifying that something is true or not. Like that creates a huge, you know, set of things where if you can rely on this, then the next set of applications become way easier to use. And so figuring out the protocols that are reliable, that like others can build on, is huge. The really cool one is conflict resolution. If we have conflict resolution that is kind of can work between two pseudonymous identities, right? We pretty much have a court, kind of what we have in the government, that is able to kind of make decisions around, facts. Like, it doesn't matter who is behind that identity. It doesn't matter kind of what is the history there. It just matters what's this conflict and what's the facts that were predating this specific thing, and maybe reputation, obviously, and maybe some other things. But it's now, we're removing all those biases that we right now have in the court system. We're removing a lot of kind of like places where people can make mistakes, and now we're really kind of simplifying it to a core primitive. And another one that I really like is work scheduling. Is really ability for people to kind of post some job, grab some job. And so this actually requires a conflict resolution, because what if they didn't do it? And so that's kind of, here in the graph, you see some of the linkage of these protocols, because they all kind of connect at the end. So this is like set of protocols that I believe we should be building. And this is a call for hackers to go out and build them. And if you are building this, reach out to me. I would love to kind of work with you and support you and figure out how we can launch this. So I was talking kind of from perspective of like technology. I was talking from perspective of building stuff. But what does this mean for users, right? Because as a user, we mentioned before, like you want self-sovereignty, you want the control, right? And so here, this idea is that user now is in the center, right? You have all these protocols kind of around you, and you're able to really interact with them. And it doesn't matter which kind of front end you're using, right? You always have access to your data. You always have access to your information, to your social graph, to all those things, to your communities. And you're able to really drive kind of usage and drives the like through this owning of a little bit pieces of this protocol, drive where they evolve as well. And so this is really powerful for these users, because like between Facebook that constantly changes rules, or like Instagram removing like button for South America, right here you have this ability to really like, if somebody built a better interface for file like image sharing using the same social protocol, awesome. Tomorrow everybody flocked there, and people who didn't flock, they still see, because if they're using the same protocol, they can still see the same stuff. They just maybe don't see all of the information that new app is using. So you now have this ability for users to choose and to really kind of drive, because of this usage, to the applications that are the best, instead of kind of this centralized platform. It's also very powerful for creators, right? A lot of creators right now, and I mentioned Instagram because that's one of the complaints, they are kind of stuck in the platform they are in, right? And usually like these platforms also use all kinds of ways to kind of restrict them from doing things. And so we already see in blockchain that creators love it, right? Part of it is because there's this concept of royalties, meaning that as things get resold or get reused, they're receiving kind of a percentage of the future value that's been transacted back to them. And this is something that obviously none of the platforms do, and none of the like physical items have ability to do that. But we can see this kind of going beyond, because now creators have a direct audience that they can connect to. There's a way to interact with them in more direct ways and get feedback and get engagement, right? And so this is also like the topic here is like passion economy. There's a lot of kind of exciting stuff happening there, even outside of blockchain. But this concept of really connecting them together, of a user, of like end user and the creator, through NFTs, through the content, through the platforms that kind of engage them, is definitely something that like both sides want, and we see already this happening across Discords, across these platforms. And like for developers, right, you have this ability to kind of mix and match pretty much already on top of existing stuff, right? Like where before you would need to, you launch an app, it's like 0 users, 0 data, and now you need to start building stuff. Here you launch an app, every single user of the platform already is your user, right? They maybe didn't do anything yet. You already have connections to a lot of data from other applications. And now you just, combine it into new experiences, create incentives, create community, and, it kind of propels it. And like DeFi in general showcases kind of for specific slice of use cases, right? Financial ones. But that was the idea, right? Like somebody launches a DeFi app, there's like $100 million worth of kind of money coming in because people are exploring what are the other apps they can use. But like they're the same platform. They know the guarantees. They don't need to, be like double checking who built this app because they know a lot of the guarantees already. The example I use is there's no chance anybody would build a like $50 billion kind of financial system on something that's like built and maintained by a dozen people, by a dozen engineers. But this is what Ethereum right now is. And so like that kind of conceptually, like that kind of ability to build on something on top, right? Something super valuable, $1 billion of value with few people as well, like Uniswap is built by a few people on top of something that's on its own is also like a startup and built by a few people, is in kind of almost unimaginable before blockchain, before open web. So like I mentioned this, but like this idea of composability, it's almost like, that's why I didn't give you like examples of apps, because there's just so many of them that you can do. And like I have some in my chart, but there's like just infinite amount of things, like, from like just example, I was trying to find some examples that are kind of funny. Like you can do like, a social network where only people who have enough reputation can talk to each other, right? Or you can have Uber for coworkers, right? Because you have social network, you can have, gig protocol for calling cars. So you can only, call the Uber for coworkers when you work or whatever. You can have a more interesting, like more real example is like you can have this personal medical data encrypted and then you share it to specific entities and you can have a log of everyone who has access to it, right? And all of this potentially is doable in the real world, but like here you have already all this, like if we have all these protocols, this becomes an extremely easy thing to do, right? Or you can have, what Axie Infinity is doing right now, but there's like a lot more opportunity to do with games that actually have like an economy around ownership, around kind of creation and destruction, and really kind of moving beyond just just the easy like pay to play. So I'm just gonna give you like one example of how this works already. So we have one app on Near called Near Crowd, which is pretty much an Amazon Mechanical Turk, which is a crowdsourcing app. And so this is done fully on chain. We have about 1,500 daily actives on it, with like over 2,000 like uniques using it. And it's already collected over 1 million data samples since launching in April, right? So this is an example of an app that kind of is literally what, like I use this kind of stuff at Google. Every single company doing machine learning is using this to collect data. And so this is like an example of this app working. And the benefit is that it pays people around the world. And we have people actually from Philippines who literally surviving right now because they have this job. And like during COVID, there's no other opportunity for them to work at in Philippines. We also have people in Russia who leaving their like shitty job, like on the factory or something, that because they are able to earn a good wage with this application. So this is really example of like this open web is not just conceptual. We have already stuff working, and like these people are non-crypto people. This is not people who are doing DeFi trading or any of the stuff. This is truly people who are like just earning very little and want to find an opportunity in their life, and creating these opportunities for them, right? Creating this economy, and then them being able to participate in it in really easy way, like sign up, not need to figure out private keys, all the stuff, and start using it. So I don't know how many of you know about Near Protocol. Just like I didn't want to talk too much about it. If you're interested, reach me, or near.org. There's a lot of information, but just high level, right? What we've been building, right, and kind of our driver is really to build something that's ready for mass adoption, right? And so we kind of build this in a way that normal people can use it. Normal people can onboard, start using it, and as I mentioned, in the case of Near Crowd, and being able to not it's not going to cost them a fortune or anything, right? It's scalable via sharding, which means like we actually maintain low cost because we actually are able to add capacity to the network. we've been really focused on making an experience as close to kind of what normal web experience is, right? We think of it as like almost like Firebase, right? And so pretty much allowing people to write in TypeScript, in Rust, allowing people to kind of use existing smart contracts with REST API, so they can easily add it to the whatever app. Stuff like this is really what drives us, like making it so easy that millions of developers are actually able to participate. And at the end, it is about community, right? I mentioned community multiple times. Like at the end, this whole thing is still people who are actually building and who are using. And so we have this huge community of kind of creators and people who are helping, and of course developers who are kind of working together to really expand this ecosystem to make things kind of easier for everyone in the world. So given you're here, you're hacking, you might be interested. We actually have it's protocol agnostic, called Open Web Collective accelerator and kind of founder community to help people to develop their applications into real products, into real things, help them with fundraise, help them with mentors, help them with tokenomics, all those things. And the application process is open right now. So if you're interested, openwebcollective.com, apply there. Just to mention, we have a lot of content that we believe in education. We believe in this space needs a lot more kind of information and teaching. And so we've been doing a lot. This is just a few examples of we've done. We have also Academy, we have certification program, all kinds of stuff. But check out our YouTube. There's a lot of videos on how contracts build, how protocols work, how like use cases can be. If you're interested in more about kind of randomness or bridges or economics in general, our blog as well is full of that. And thank you. And yeah, I'm excited to respond to your questions.
Thank you for such an excellent presentation. Really glad to have you in today. I wanted to ask you just a few questions about the direction of NEAR and the developments in the future. I know you're just hitting your 3-year mark now. What the big part of the next half of the year will look like for you in terms of development.
For sure, yeah. So I mean, NEAR as ecosystem has like lots of levels, and I mean, as this probably is a great example where it's like, well, in this level, we have a set of things that's happening in this level. So I mean, overall, if we're talking about specifically the protocol, right, the blockchain part, we continue working on the sharding design. There's a lot of interesting things coming out. It's kind of resharding, changing number of shards and things like that. We're also working on really kind of optimizing things. Like initially, we did a lot of stuff just to kind of launch it, but there's a lot of ways we can optimize and make the kind of protocol even cheaper and faster to run, right? And that's obviously going to be a goal going forward. On kind of next level, we have a lot of interesting stuff coming out. One of the cool things that just came out kind of a few months ago have been Aurora. And Aurora is a separate company, it's a separate project that is providing people who want to write in Solidity for kind of EVM ability to do it on NEAR. So it's actually infrastructurally, we took EVM and they compiled it to WebAssembly and run it as a smart contract. And that just shows you how powerful kind of our native environment is. But this allows like kind of all the developers who want to target EVM able to build that and kind of enjoy all the same benefits that they're getting from NEAR. We have Bridge that connects to Ethereum. There's kind of few other bridges that are in progress that are coming out. There's a lot of kind of NFT things that are growing like this. Like I'm not sure even I know all the projects that are building on NEAR anymore in that space. And there's also like a huge set of DeFi as well that's coming out. And like I'm pretty excited as like it actually starts to kind of boost the economy of NEAR through a lot of these DeFi tools. So I think that's kind of the basics things that probably half a year, but and kind of this covers a lot of this chart already. And then over time, I'll be excited about these protocols that I mentioned. I mean, I don't think like the few I know that have been worked on, but I would love to see kind of all of the ones I mentioned to actually be in progress in a year or so.
That makes sense. For our newcomers to the hack, I know you put a list up of some projects that you'd like to be seen worked on. For the specific new to Ethereum or maybe new to near hackers, do you think those are accomplishable? I mean, or are there actionable ones that you could announce today that might be more efficient for the newcomers?
So I think you can get to an MVP in a hackathon. It's not going to be like the whole thing. You're not going to be probably launching it right away, but you can get something interesting that, if you willing to continue and stick with it, you can build a company and fundraise and do all the kind of actual like growing it into a real protocol over time. Again, I mean, each one of these is like a full, full project pretty much of the level of, some of the projects that are here, right? So
I think that's what's incredible is you could really drill down on any one of these and spend a lifetime doing it. I don't think some of our hackers understand the sort of magnitude of the ecosystem that we're involved in. It's interesting to see everyone from across the world focusing on the same ideas at the same time. I think progress is inherent with that.
Well, that's why I was drawing this graph, because if you look at it, like this is DeFi, and sure, it's cool, like these things, but like there's a lot of other stuff going on here. And it's all interrelated too. Like DeFi is powering a lot of the other components, so you kind of need to have both to kind of really come together.
What do you think is not getting enough attention right now? I know we've sort of talked about the parts that are and what's most interesting, but what do you think are the stones that are unturned?
I mean, I think the least thing is where you really need to hit kind of the people side of things. Like conflict resolution is where I think Kara's been working on that, but like Claris, but like and Argon a little bit, but in general, that's kind of it's a very messy problem, right? It's like two entities are not agreeing and stuff, and so people are kind of naturally avoiding it, especially like when you can write 1,000 lines and build something that's like really valuable. So I think that's where like the space of things that are not really being looked at is space of where you really need to kind of start interacting with people and communities and really figure out how to like solve some of these harder problems.
Right on. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time to walk us through all of that today. This has been incredibly insightful.